Hi guys, I'm here with Andrew Johnson and we are going to talk about...
Well, they used to be called UFOs, didn't they? But
yeah,
they're not called that anymore.
They've been rebranded. It's kind of like when cold fusion was rebranded to low energy nuclear reactions, or, you know.
That's the way around, yeah.
Anyway, so I'm in an undisclosed drain pipe, hence the audio. And it's my pleasure to be here with Andrew. And I have to say, on camera for the first time, thank you very much, Andrew, because if it wasn't for you putting me in contact with John Hutchison, I'd have never had an opportunity to get some samples from him and analyze those samples and then find these self-similar clusters that looked like the Gions of Wheeler from the 1954 paper. It would turn out now, and it would never have led down the path of realizing, in my view, that this is coherent matter, and it is the same as ball lightning, and this technology is all related, and it can it can influence matter, the structure of matter, and it can do all kinds of magical things, which I think are in the technology of UAPs, as they're now called.
Yes, I think it's important to realise that, and some of the things we're going to try and cover briefly tonight, that yes, we're talking about technology. You've been looking at some of the science behind that technology, and there is a big crossover in this. I mean, we were just talking before we started doing the stream about people like John Alexander being associated with John Hutchison, and of course John Alexander has done a book on UFOs. He's talked about UFOs publicly for 2 or 3, 4 decades by now, I think. So I would say, I don't know whether Bob would agree, but Alexander is one of the people that knows a lot more than he lets on. He knows a lot more about the black programs that, as you've talked about, condensed matter. And he is very interested in things like ball lightning,
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you be? I mean, these aerial phenomena you see are not just things that may actually be alien craft or our own craft. They could actually just be manifestations of the natural phenomena that, personally, for my own belief, is that these technologically produced devices are using this natural phenomena, and then why wouldn't they? In fact, you could only use something that was possible in nature. So you would have to find something in nature that was able to give you these properties that we witness in these so-called fantastical craft. So what we've done actually for you is we have, if I just stop this over here, we've got the down in the bottom left here we have the score, because unfortunately the England-Denmark match went over, and we have this paper here which you can see, which is this unclassified document, which was this breakdown of the preliminary assessment of unidentified aerial phenomena. And this was from 25th of June 2021. Now, I actually have only skim-read this. You've actually read a lot of it, haven't you?
I read the whole thing, because I mean, the joke of it is it's only 9 pages. Yeah. One of those is the title page, and one is the appendix.
Yes.
So you've really basically got 7 pages. I don't think any of those pages are full.
No. It's a comical disappointment to many.
It's laughable, really, when you actually read it.
Yeah.
There are no specific cases mentioned. Really. I think possibly one might be mentioned, and they basically say, well, we've got a record of 144 cases of weird phenomena, UAPs as they're now called them. They don't even mention UFO, and they basically say, well, we're still not really sure what these are. We think there might be something, and they're worth investigating, but we don't know how to investigate them, because we haven't got a classification system. So give us a load of money, and then we'll develop a reporting and classification system to be unified across all the forces, and then we'll move forward.
So really it looked like a public document that says, yes, there's something interesting, we don't know what it is, we don't know how they work, and can you give us some more money? That's essentially how you summarised it. That's
essentially how I summarised it. I think that's a fair assessment. There's nothing really new in this document, and in fact, it's going into reverse. It's actually a reverse disclosure. And I briefly heard Louis Elizondo, this we'll probably mention him again in a bit, but he was talking about this, saying, oh yeah, this is the unclassified report, and he actually says that on the footer of each page. But there is apparently a classified report as well.
Yeah, I've heard some rumours about that there's like I don't know, 14 videos, and they run for 60 minutes, and the stuff that you see in those videos is absolutely looks like science fiction. And also in this classified part, apparently there is this list of technologies that have been tried with various levels of success, but we have no idea if this is just wishful thinking on the part of people that might want to be spreading information that may or may not be true.
And the key point that's come out in the media, I don't think it's not so obvious in the report particularly, but in the media they're saying that this is a UFO threat, and we've talked about this. The media have been talking about this UFO threat assessment unit, which Lou Elizondo allegedly headed up. But Rich D. Hall, he did an analysis of Lou Elizondo's earlier interviews from about a couple of years ago when he first sort of sprang onto the scene. And apparently from the statement analysis, part of what he was saying might have been true, but some of it definitely wasn't, or almost certainly wasn't. So this guy is not to be trusted, and a dark journalist, Daniel List, has done a good analysis of the whole Lou Elizondo and this To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge thing. Tom DeLonge has been sidelined now, and they've really brought out Chris Mellon, haven't they, and Lou Elizondo. They're sort of the two faces. And
I understand that Hal Puthoff has also come away from the project, is that right?
I believe so, I don't. Daniel List has gone into this a little bit, and I haven't followed it all. But you've got people like Hal Puthoff has been sniffing around this. Certainly he was part of the TTSA. He may have distanced himself from it now because that hasn't panned out perhaps the way they wanted it to. So the thing that I think is key in this is the threat assessment angle. And they've talked about, I clicked on an article in the Guardian today, and that openly said, the US is worried about the security or issue with these aerial phenomena. So that's what they're pushing.
And you want to know really why they're doing that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had the pleasure, actually, I was contacted by a party who said, there's this journalist, he's Australian, and he would like to maybe interview you. You're okay with that? I said, what's it about? Oh, it's about unidentified aerial phenomenon. And I thought, well, that's okay. I've got something that he won't expect me to say. And, I just about a couple of hours before the interview, I took a look at his website and I saw that it seemed to be very well respected and being published in a bit. And I thought, okay, so the guy looks like he's serious, and I'll take some time with him. Why not? And we had a good interview, and that's on remoteview.icu, and you can see the first half of that on the MFMP's YouTube. And the guy is called Ross Coulthart, and he's a fantastic storyteller, absolutely fantastic. And he came out with a documentary on, I think it was on something 7 or something from an Australian channel.
Channel 9, was it?
Channel 7, Channel 9, some Australian. What did you think of that?
I thought it was quite interesting. I thought it was just going to be selling. And it does do selling of the Lou Elizondo and the Chris Mellon. He bigs them up to a reasonable extent. And I thought, oh God, it's not going to be all of that. But then he goes into a couple of other interesting cases, which kind of surprised me. And he comes across pretty well as an enthusiastic and affable chap. So it's quite an interesting documentary that you can find. Which channel is it on? Because you sent me a link, didn't you?
Well, you can get it on YouTube.
Yeah, so it's definitely on YouTube, the whole thing, and it was recently aired, wasn't it? I think within the last couple of weeks. I forget the exact air date. So that again was put out in the build-up of this pendant UFO.
I think it was called The Phenomenon, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so you want to look at the word phenomenon, Ross Coulthart. And I think it's almost like a trailer for his book that's coming out later in the year.
Yeah, he mentions his book a couple of times. I think it's out, but I don't know. Maybe
No, I pre-ordered it. It's coming out next month or the end of this month, maybe.
Right.
It's only $9.99, so you can get that.
I think
it's a digital copy. I pre-ordered that. But the interesting thing about when I had that interview with Ross, I talked about something which I had experienced as less than 10-year-old. So we're talking 30 plus years ago. And this was my father, who was a senior mason in the UK, and he asked me and my brothers and sisters to come downstairs and said, look up into the night sky. And so we dutifully did what we were asked to do. And these 4 bright lights went blipped on, went and then flashed and disappeared. And he said, like, right, go to bed. And I never thought too much about it, you know. And so I think he was a bit taken aback, but that's my experience. And so what happened was that I've been reflecting upon that, actually, like I'd never done before. And I thought, listen, my father was in the Navy, but for a period of time, not a long time, just in national service. But he was a Mason. And I thought, what's more likely, that my father has contact with aliens and can ask them to put a show on for him, or that either through the Masons or through his Navy contacts, that they were doing something for us kids as a gift to him for whatever reason. I have no idea. And this was just a show of technology. Now, when you look at when that was, if I was born in 1972 and I was 7 or 8, that was before 1980. Or around at that time. And so we're talking about something that was able to fly. Now, could have technically been one long craft, because the spacing between these 4 lights, they did not change.
Yeah.
And so it could have just come into thing, shifted. That would help explain their co-location and the distance between each other being exact. And so on. So it could have been one craft, or it could have been 4 in a line. Whatever, this was not an aircraft that was doing manoeuvres that any aircraft at the time would be able to do, or even now that we are generally aware of. And so I believe that in 1980, it was the technology, if you want to conclude that this is correct, would be capable of doing the same kind of manoeuvres that they're talking about in these disclosures they're having now.
This starts to get to the nub of what this Pentagon document is a cover for, I think, because they're claiming, no, we don't know what these things are, we don't know whether there might be alien, they don't mention that in this document, but that's certainly been alluded to in the press. We really don't know what these things are. They've got advanced aerial capabilities, but this is just a total lie. You know, from the account that you've stated there. Also, a few weeks ago, you advised me that Mark McCandless had died.
Yeah, and apparently he was due, like I think in June.
He was due to testify before the committee. Now, for people that don't know who Mark McCandless is, they just put his name into YouTube, and they will very quickly find several videos. I think quite a few actually, of him talking about knowledge of something that he called the alien reproduction vehicle, or he said this name was given to him by another contact called Brad Sorensen, who had been to an air show, I think in California somewhere. I think it was some facility associated with Skunk Works, and this was in I think 1988. I can't remember the date of this story, and I've put this in my book, a little bit about this in my books. Finding the Secret Space Program and Knowledge, which are free PDF downloads from Check the Evidence. But Mark McCandless, he told this story, the first time I heard it was in 2003, but he told it at Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project. That was in 2001. Was that like in the first week of September in 2000? May, it was May.
It was earlier in the year.
Before 9/11.
Yeah.
And he held up this drawing which he'd actually developed, because his friend had managed to get quite a decent technical description of this alien reproduction vehicle, and he drew it all out, and he put this document up in an office somewhere, or he gave it to somebody who then put it up in their office. And an Air Force officer apparently came into this office, saw this technical diagram that Mark McCandless had developed, and said, "Where the hell did you get that? Take that down!" And it was taken away according to what Mark McCandless was told.
Yeah.
So. And that, these stories go back to the 80s as well, and I think he alluded to the date, dating to be something like 1960s when this ARV was probably.
And that is a very, very interesting date. So you have this pattern of information. I'm going to run through a couple of things that I've talked about in the past, and I think they're really key to maybe getting a view on whether these are possibly our devices, human devices. Now, the term alien reproduction vehicle implies that there are alien vehicles, and that this was taken or sort of back engineered from that. So at no point in this am I saying or suggesting that there aren't alien vehicles out there. But you have that other case, which I think in Ross Coulthart's video presentation, he was talking about. He was talking to this guy, and he was saying that there's the F-15s or something that they were interacting with this so-called Tic Tac aircraft. And the key point here in that testimony is that the Tic Tac went to a point in space, in the sky, where the aircraft were meant to go and rendezvous as part of this exercise. And the point is like, oh, isn't it amazing? This Tic Tac knew where they were going, and they got there beforehand. And it's like, what is Occam's razor then?
Yeah, exactly.
What is Occam's razor?
In the documentary, they don't discuss the possibility that the craft went there because the Air Force told them where they were going to go or where they needed to be.
But they did say that this was only about information was available to a small group that were running the exercise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Occam's razor there is that they are literally saying this is our craft. Right? I mean, that's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's if I didn't know and hadn't witnessed these things that my father had asked us to witness.
And if I can sort of interject with another famous UFO incident, the Rendlesham incident in the UK in 1980, you know, Richard D. Hall has done quite a bit of investigation into that, and many others have as well. But he sort of came to the conclusion that because of the language that some of the airmen were using, and I think it's particularly true of some of what Colonel Holt said, Colonel Charles Holt, what that might have been is that they were landing an advanced type of drone near the base, which was a nuclear-armed base, as a part of a test operation, similar to the scenario you've just described with the rendezvousing of planes with this object there, to see how people would react in this scenario with a supposed alien craft landing or flying through airspace that they were involved in. And this is something that Jacques Vallée actually talked about as well. He suggested that the Rendlesham incident was a psychological operation to test the response of.
And I think that's what's going on. It might even have been when my father was having us shown this craft. What was the response? And the response from 5 of his children that span a decade. From practically adult down to 6 or 5 year old was, oh, all right, Dad, good night.
Yeah.
It's like
you just kind of accept it, don't you?
Literally, I didn't think of it almost for the most of the rest of my life. And in fact, I didn't think of it. One of our early sponsors for the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project was absolutely very keen on UFOs. And he kept trying to push me in that direction, and I thought, okay, but I didn't look, and it was like that's how much I'd forgotten it. You know, like it wasn't important, and so maybe even we were an experiment. I don't know.
Maybe. You don't know.
You want to try these visuals on all kinds of different people, and I've also talked about. The fact that this person that stayed with me, his girlfriend in North Hawaiian Islands, was a diving instructor and used to take the elites out into the islands, and this was anyway. She said there were these things flying around underwater, and they would fly out. And I said these things before the disclosure of the thing going in and out of the water in this recent disclosure.
Yeah.
And she said that they were going in and flying around with impunity in and out of the water. And when she started talking about it, well, her life was ceased to exist, as it were. She stopped breathing, let's put it like that. And when I spoke about this to another guest I had a couple of years later, who was from Hawaii also, she just turned excitedly to her partner and said, I told you I saw these as a kid and recently. And so there's definitely something going on in off the north
and of course,
coast of Hawaii.
You may be familiar with Bill Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse. It's in the early part of that book that he discusses when he was at sea, in the US Navy. And he saw craft coming out of the water and going up either into space or certainly out of sight in the sky, and then coming back again.
Yeah, right.
That was his kind of introduction to the whole idea of advanced technology that could do that. And
so let's talk on that. In this kind of thing with Ross Coulthart, I think even Christopher Mellon and who's it? Louis Elizondo. They all have this kind of narrative that it's doing things that we don't know how it can be achieved. They're impossible, and there's no technology, and that we don't have any idea. And I disagree. I flatly disagree with that assessment. And I don't know whether that's all they're allowed to say, or whether, you know, they want to toe a line which is, you know, not too sensational at this point. But I can pretty much tell you that what we have seen in the Vega experiments and what we know about ball lightning, they can do all of these things.
Yes, I agree.
We know that ball lightning can carry a mass, and it would appear to shield its mass and inertia. That's basically stopping gravity.
Go back to other things that you and I spent a lot of time talking about. This is all interrelated with what happened on 9/11. You know, and I make the case that none of the UFO community is talking about 9/11. And well, you might think I'm a wanderer. Why should they? But that again ties into some of the research you've done with the Hudson effect, because you and I essentially started talking to each other because of Dr. Judy Wood's research into 9/11.
Well, no, specifically, I was doxed by someone who claimed I was mad for going down that thought process.
Right.
And 5 months after that person doxed me, I was informed about this. And I went to the page, and the exact same day, you had written something saying, well, he might be bonkers, but what he's talking about this is correct.
Right.
And so I want to talk about something that kind of fits into this. And this was the work of Eric Davis. Because Eric Davis, who you might be aware had this Admiral Wilson release, Eric Davis also did this study on ball lightning.
Yes.
And it was commissioned at the end, I think in October 2001. It was like anyone in the world that knows anything about ball lightning and related technologies. Now, ball lightning is coherent matter. Coherent matter, according to the Lockheed Martin patent, is able to provide propulsion, and we know that ball lightning can do anti-gravity-like effects, and that's in a very small summary. So Eric Davis is looking at this, and I've got a couple of slides here which I'm going to share, and I think probably I'm going to hope that England still stay at 2-1, because we're going to lose that in the background for you.
I said to Bob, "What's football?" Carry on.
I said, if the football match goes into extra time, it's like, no, end time. So it would appear that we have won. So a yay for England. I'm sorry for the Danes, but
and I'm not bothered, everybody.
Anyway, the point is we can now go on with the presentation quick. So let's talk with UAPs with Andrew Johnson. So what we're saying actually is that the argument is these may be a threat, give us money, and you know, we don't really know how they work and so on. I don't think that is honest. I don't think that is honest. Now, the individuals may be not privy to the information, but I don't think that's honest. There is technology, and there was signs that technology could be delivered as early as this work, which was done by said by Tesla. And this is here. You can see it says, "How about aerial navigation?" Dr. Tesla was asked. He considered for a moment or two, and then replied with great deliberation, "The application of this principle will give the world a flying machine unlike anything that has ever been suggested before. It will have no planes, no screw propellers or devices of any kind hitherto used. It will be small and compact, excessively swift, and above all, perfectly safe in the greatest storm. It can be built of any size and can carry any weight that may be desired." And this was published in The Sun, New York, 1911. Tesla promises big things. Now, there's a few things you've got to draw your attention to here. Perfectly safe in the greatest storm. You have these people saying that they're able to stand there where there's a very high wind current and they're not moving. and go against the wind. That is covered by this 1911 statement by Tesla. It can be built of any size. These things have been shown to be any size,
just about, yes.
and look like they can carry any weight, right?
Just about.
And then the other thing is it has no planes. What is no planes? That's like no wings or
no
anything.
wing surfaces,
Okay, and no propellers, no screw propellers like a helicopter, and so everything you see here is as these devices are described to be. In 1911. Now, as I understand it, I might be wrong in saying this, but there's some school of thought that says Werner von Braun was working at Los Alamos National Laboratory. There's even been German-made sort of dials and stuff found from this period there, were bought at an auction or something. And then Werner von Braun then went to Germany and worked there, and then came back after the war as part of that paperclip program. I might have got that wrong, but you know more about those kind of stuff.
I certainly hadn't heard the bit about before the war, that and Los Alamos, but you know, Los Alamos is heavily involved in all of this, you know, and I've written a bit about that in my books. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole kind of story of how the stuff has been originally, you know, captured by the Nazis, or there's talk of crashes. And I think in that film you sent me, the Greenyer film, he talks about a crash in 1920, doesn't he? He mentioned this body.
Yeah, he does. And that was new to me.
Yeah, that was new to me. Yeah. So, you know, how long has this been going on? We don't know. But I mean, there's plenty of evidence. One of the people I came into very close and quite lengthy communications with was Edgar Fouché, who talks a lot about the and if you've heard of this thing, the TR3B, any listeners that have heard of that, that was the TR3B originally came from Edgar Fouché in 1998, and I interviewed him for 5 hours, and I've written his account in my book, Finding the Secret Space Program, Removing Truth's Protective Layers, and that's available for free. So there's a whole other thread with that. We talked about Mark McCandless's thread. You've talked about the Lockheed Martin investigation.
Well, we're going to build on that. I'm going to build on that.
So there's all this stuff in the background,
yeah,
which leads in similar directions. In that there's alternative energy technology, alternative propulsion technology, you know, alternative understandings of the way that matter behaves and can be manipulated, you know. And that, of course, ties into John Hutchison. It ties into Eric Davies, as you said, and there are probably a couple.
So we're going to draw that out. So essentially, one of the people was brought in, Winston Bostick, I think it was 1948, to take the H bomb, which Wheeler had been involved in making, that came up with the Geons. He was to take that and try and make it into domestic fusion technology. And what he did was he had basically high energy, short duration discharges from multiple locations that went over a magnetic field. And this looks very much like the patent from Lockheed Martin using the Aharonov bomb effect and creating coherent matter waves and beams thereof. And so you have something, and what happened is he started to present this work in 1957 and said that basically this could explain everything from the microcosm to the macrocosm. And one of the presentations he gave was this one, and I'm going to just show it here. And this was in January the 31st, 1958, in the Albuquerque Journal, and it's about his concept was that this technology would allow for a 2.5 million mile per hour motor, the application of what was he called condensed plasmoids. And of course we now know these are much more complicated than he understood them to be. And here it is, it says, a space motors reaching speeds of 700 miles a second, 2.5 million miles an hour, were described Wednesday to the American Astronautical Society. They don't exist yet, but they should be possible, said Dr. Winston H. Bostick, Professor of Physics at Stephen Institute of Technology. They would be plasma motors. In this case, plasma means a cloud of ionized or electrically charged gas. The idea is to use pulses of electric current and magnetism to get the gas particles moving at fantastic speeds. Then they could be shot out of the motor to produce a forward thrust similar to an expanding chemical gases, which come out of the tailpipe of an ordinary rocket. Such a motor would work only in the vacuum of space. At 2.5 million miles an hour, a ship could reach Mars in 15 to 20 hours. So what you would need is you would need to set up a company that was very good at getting heavy things into space. And then once you're there, you could deliver a device like this as being discussed in 1957 or 1950, I think it's 1957, 1958, to get to Mars in 15 to 20 hours. And you could kind of pretend that you were doing it in a very slow way and get a lot of money for doing it like that, and then just deliver a thing that gets you there in 15 to 20 hours, because you had it up your sleeve for half a decade plus, half a century plus. But anyway, the principle is somewhat like that, aimed at getting peaceful power from the H-bomb reaction. The electric current and magnetic forces are used to make ionized hydrogen atom cores fuse together and produce power. Now, my point about this is, and I will talk about this, the ARV, I will talk about that, I'll talk about this in terms of ancient archaeology, and I'll talk about it with observations in the Hutchison effect and Ken Shoulders and so forth. But before I do that, this will be in other presentations in the coming months, weeks and months. But this is the ball lightning study that I was talking about. And I won't go into it completely. I've done a thorough review of this in the past. So there's a ball lightning study by Eric Davis, commissioned late 2001, reported May 2003. And it says the first new concept is atmospheric maser cavitation. Here, maser cavitation. The second concept is based on the electromagnetic vortex plasmoids generated by micro-discharge devices. This, and it's specified later in the document that this is Ken Shoulders' work and sustained by quantum vacuum energy. I disagree with this. It is something that comes from the vacuum, not necessarily the quantum, but there is energy that you can harness from the vacuum, and it is something that allows it to tractor through. I will talk about this in great and explicit detail moving forward. And the third concept is this, and this classification code means space and aerospace. And so they classified it for that reason, programmed by the Air Force, funded in the 1950s and 60s. I would suggest that this is the ARV program. And so this is, in my view, an explicit admission. This means that Eric Davis, who's with the, Admiral Wilson, knows of this technology.
I would say
and
so.
Eric Davis worked with Hal Puthoff. Hal Puthoff started monitoring the MFMP in 2013 when we produced this radiation coming out of our Chelani cells in October 2013. I didn't know that. I just had this contact by EarthTech Texas. It wasn't until 2017 when I made the connection between Ken Shoulders and John Hutchison that I reached out to them, because Ken Shoulders unfortunately passed away. And then I got the cold shoulder when I said this explains Lena, and it also explains a lot more. And that's when I found out that Hal Puthoff worked there. And
yeah,
so,
I mean, he was only interested in what you knew. He wasn't interested in...
But no, I understood in 2017 that initial emission of radiation when you interact hydrogen was an absolute signature of the effect that leads you down a path where you understand the full gamut of technology.
Yeah,
and it wasn't until much later that I read the Christopher P. Tinsley interview with Martin Fleischmann in Infinite Energy, where he's saying we were working on 4 things. Cold fusion was one of them. One was like superconductivity in metal. Another one was whatever he mentioned. And there was something that they didn't mention, but there's a whole block in that interview, which is the only block where there's kind of, it looks like something has been edited out, but the interviewer starts talking about anti-gravity prior to that part of the discussion. So categorically, I think that this is the keys to the kingdom, as it were. And it is coherent matter, and that's what does low-energy nuclear reactions, but it's also the key to the very fact that Eric Davis is connected with and he actually, the paper, if you look at it, I'm going to show you here now, his organisation, if I can get the right mouse, I've got too many mouses in front of me. If you actually look at this paper here, and I'll give the links, but you look at this paper here, it's a ball lightning study by Eric W. Davis by the wonderfully called warp drive metrics. I mean, it's just hilarious. It's like it's being rubbed in your face. And it's a study for the Air Force. This guy is not messing around.
He knows a lot.
Yeah, he knows a lot. That's absolutely the case. So you have this connection between ball lightning, anti-gravity, because we have shown that you can have a coherent matter plasma ball, a ball of ball lightning inside a Vega reactor, and that can hold a very large piece of tungsten relative to its size and move it around as if it had no mass at all. you know, and we videoed that, and we've also shown how it can do all of the things described in the Lockheed Martin patent that we will come to. So, so let's go back to the slides here. So this is the Eric Davis study. Then you've got to talk about what Ken Shoulders said in his 2010 interview that I transcribed with John Hutchison. And he says, Mike, on the subject of gravity, I don't give a hoot about gravity as long as there's a source of propulsion. Propulsion is as fundamental as you can get. It's controllable gravity. Directional control over any force you want. Sure, you can liken it to gravity, but yeah, I'll take propulsion any day. Now, why is that so important? Because anti-gravity, you need something to be anti-against, right? But propulsion, you can work in like anti-gravity mode, but you can also, like, against gravity, and you can also work in space. This technology does both, and it also works in the water. And as we've seen with ball lightning, a ball lightning can travel through things if it's in its neutral mode, and the material inside, its charge and mass and everything, as also said by Ken Shoulders in that same transcript, the charge is screened. So somehow you get this thing that acts as one electron. But it also is basically, it's like one electron having to go through things. So it's like if the electron doesn't interact because its wave function is so big, because it's big coherent matter, it can pass through something. So when it goes into water, a different medium, it doesn't see that medium. It doesn't see it. And so it explains how something can go from the air to the water and out, like that testimony that was given to me about that woman that sadly had her life taken from her, outside of the Hawaiian Islands, and like these more recent disclosures of these things coming in and out of the water. So let's go back to our slides here. So this Ken Shoulders, and you can go and read that transcript there that has that additional information there. Now I want to talk about how this ties in with the systems and methods for generating coherent matter wave beams. This patent here, and look at what is being said here. Examples of applications for coherent matter wave beams include single bath thermal extraction. This was talked about in 1982 or 1986 by Tom Bearden, and this is how you would create weather systems. You would either suck energy out of a space, an area of space at a distance, or you would pump energy into it, and if you do both, you end up by creating a vortex, and that creates initiates your weather system. Ultra-sensitive accelerometers, blah blah blah. The interesting ones down here that are key: matter wave projectiles and missiles, directed energy weapons, matter wave optics and cloaking, matter wave emissions, and propulsion. Matter wave solitons, these are our EVOs, and high energy collision and high precision matter optics. What you are looking at there is the fact that Lockheed Martin, in this 2013 patent, let me get you this specific patent up so you can see it, and I have it here in another window, so let's get that up for you. So this is this patent, and I've talked about this at length, and I've tied it through to many other things. You can go and look at those presentations on remoteview.icu, and I very specifically chose this as one of the first 3 presentations I put on remoteview.icu because it ties so much together. But this is an awarded patent, and it was published on July the 4th, 2013, but it has a priority from here. They have 10 years to make good on this, so they've got to start announcing this technology and asking for money to make it, because in my opinion, they already have it. So it's kind of like getting money for something you've already made. But they can then go and sell it because they've got 11 years, 10 years to go with the patent. I mean, it's frankly, it's a scam. It's just a scam. It's already been bought and paid for by the American taxpayer and probably a lot of the rest of the world. It exists, and probably they're going to use a fake alien invasion nonsense using the technology they already have to get a huge amount of money. Because if the subprime mortgage crisis wasn't enough of a scam, and if the other scam about, well, we won't go into it too much, but you might have been aware of this thing that's been going about, it gives you the sniffles. If that's not enough, then this is like the final throwdown, alien invasion. And
this, of course, goes back to what Carol Rosin was saying back in 2001.
Yes.
In Greenyer's Disclosure Project, and I've written a lot about Greenyer, and I'm very critical of him in certain respects.
I think in his recent presentation, he just put out a show, and I think he brought in a relative of the Mellon family, right?
Yes,
Am I right in saying that?
John Warner, that's right.
John
so
Warner,
he's a cousin
okay.
of Chris Mellon,
Yeah.
who's against the fake CIA-run, UFO op, which I think they're going to morph into, as you said a minute ago, the fake alien invasion. And as I've pointed out, and I made a video back in 2011, I think it was, because people were talking about this fake alien invasion. You might remember back in 2011.
Well, I think it was actually in a wiki. I think it was Julian Assange who said
possibly
that in the documents that he has, he says the last scam they're going to pull is the fake alien invasion.
And this was, Greenyer pointed out, this was even mentioned in the coronavirus relief bill, not the fake alien invasion, but the...
Oh, now you've done it, you've said the word.
The UFO...
Goodbye video.
I don't think you picked that up. This is in the relief bill, something about UFO disclosure. I haven't seen the document. I think Greenyer will be reliable on that. Yeah. But they're building up to this, and why I mentioned is I made a video in 2011 because there were people back then who were saying they were going to do it in 2012. The whole end of the mine.
I think what you have seen in what's just happened over the last 18 months is a test run for how they can manipulate minds and how gullible people are. Seriously gullible. And it's not so. You have the 2010 Rockefeller document. You have the SPAs from 2017. Right. Everything is completely detailed in extreme detail in these documents, and yet still people believe what's going on.
That's right,
and so what they've shown is we can literally do anything, and they are like lambs to the slaughter.
And the expression is, well, they can get away with murder, and we've got to add to that now because they can get away with mass murder, as I would see it. Mm-hmm. But it is important that people understand. Basically, the summary of what we're saying is they're claiming they don't know what these things are. We argue they know exactly what they are because they've developed the technology, and probably what they're writing about in their report is their own stuff. Mm-hmm. They've set the incidents up. And so, if you look at what happened on 9/11, and this was the video I made back in 2010, where you see the towers turning to dust, and then you flip back to the 1996 Independence Day movie with the Empire State Building being blown up by a giant flying saucer. You put the two things side by side, in other words 9/11 as I did in the video and the Independence Day clip, and then you bring in the last 12, 16 months, whatever, there you are. That's it. That's really what the point, one of the main points of this video is, isn't it?
And when this video is censored, don't worry, we have it recorded, so we'll post it in a different place.
We'll post it on a platform which is not quite so prone to censorship.
And hopefully I won't get too many strikes. But anyway, these things need to be said because they are obviously all related. And so we have a situation where I think we are both agreed that this is it's a psychological operation. And you sent me an image. Now, when was this image?
I believe this was either today or yesterday.
Okay, so I'm gonna play this now, and it's absolutely amazing. This is on Jeremy Vine, and it's on I think it's like a morning program.
Yeah, it's Channel 5 UK, sort of 9:30 to 12 to 11 or something.
So, how would you deal with an alien invasion? There you go. How would you deal with it? Well, they know how you would deal with it. You would go, tell me when to breathe. Tell me when I should jump off a cliff. Tell me what I need to put in my arm. Tell me, please, what should I do? The world is coming to an end. And it's all going to be rubbish. Yeah. It's going to be nonsense.
It's following the exact theme we've been talking about, deception.
It's complete deception. They have this technology. As I said in the beginning of 2017, I looked into the camera and I said, you have got a few years to fess up to this because it's coming out. And they didn't know that I had seen the technology when I was not even 10 years old. Okay, they had no idea. And they could not have imagined how me meeting you is basically an impossibility, and it happened. Do you remember what happened when we first met, physically? You tell the story.
Well, I mean, this was the restaurant, wasn't it, where we got the menu and this.
Well, hold on. So we were having a chat in
We've talked about this.
we have, yeah, but I mean we're doing it together because it's like
a randomly chosen restaurant.
Well, we were talking for about an hour in the station, weren't we? And we were having coffee.
Yeah.
And then I said, "Well, are you hungry?" And you said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, should we go and get something to eat?" And you said, "Yeah, I know something. No, a street, didn't you?"
Yeah. There's got a load of bars on there. Or something.
Okay, so you chose the street. So we walked me down to this street, and then I could see, and I knew what I wanted. I wanted a dirty burger, and there was this place called Cattle and Co. And so I said, "Well, it's Cattle and Co. They're probably going to have a burger." And I said, "What did you want?"
I can't remember what.
You said you wanted a salad, and I thought, okay, let's hope they got a salad. I walked in and I said, "Do you have salads?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, we're going to take that table outside." So we walked outside, and I think she was like 19, wasn't she? Like came out this waitress, and she handed us the menu, and the first thing in the centre of the menu was it was what you came for ... And then under that, under the 3 dots, was the 9.1.1 burger. A perfect perfect fusion of chicken and beef. A yin yang to soothe your heart or something. And it was literally a burger where they had the chicken in one part of the yin and the beef in the other part of the yin, and it had a battered piece of bacon flame coming out of the side, didn't it? At the top of the sort of just below the top of the bum, below the bum, wasn't it? And that was it. What are the chances of that? What are the chances of that? And so I would say that when you see this on your television, it is a scam. They are trying to scam us. And I think that's pretty much all we have to say on that.
Yeah,
what I think.
I'd like to speak for longer, but I've got a prior engagement.
Yes,
so.
there's nothing else that they can do. That they've pulled the financial one.
Yeah.
They've sucked the money out of us for that. They've pulled the disease one. They've sucked the money out of that. They're trying the never-ending war. They did that first, and they'll probably have another war. But they've sucked the money out of us for the environmental, never-ending environmental problems. You've got the never-ending bogeyman, the never-ending disease, the never-ending environmental problem, and the coup de grace is the absolute rubbish nonsense alien invasion. And that's it. And I'm sick to death. When I saw Stephen Greenyer, I thought, that man looks how I feel about this nonsense. We've had this. I personally know we've had this because my father is not in contact with aliens. And if he is, they're friendly. So they're not going to be attacking us. So the only other possible option is that these are craft that the British had, or that a British man could have put on a show for him. So that's it. I think that's all we have to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got to dive off and now.
We don't have time to take questions, so it's been a real pleasure, and thank you, because as I said at the beginning of this presentation, if it wasn't for Andrew, I would never have had the opportunities to meet the people and make the connections that led me to understand that this is coherent matter, and then to find out that Lockheed Martin, no less, is specifically saying that this will do propulsion and all of the other things that we've observed in the lab over the years. It's a slam dunk, and it's the same characters involved. So that's all we can say. I expect this to be taken down, but we have it recorded. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.
Well.
Bye bye for now.